So roller coasters, who loves them? Like, oh, give me more. You're like, do we have 3 or 4 more of those? We do. We actually looked at 3 or 4 different ones, and I watched them all. And by the end, I was in the category of roller coasters. Who doesn't love them? Right? I mean, I used to, I'm like, man, I love a great roller coaster. But now I'm in the category of, I got one per day. One the day that I'm there, I can ride it once. If we ride it early, I'm probably not going to feel great the whole rest of the day, but I'll feel fine by dinner. But if I ride it late, I'm not going to feel great in dinner, and I'll feel good in the morning, right? So roller coasters, like, I think you fall into one category or the other. And I told Amy, I said, look, if you don't know Amy, that's my wife. She's right there. And this is a sidebar. She's going to hate this. This is our wedding anniversary. So we are not only celebrating Mother's Day. Today is our 29th wedding anniversary. So happy anniversary to you. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the perks of getting to wear the microphone, right? So roller coasters, right? The thing with those is there's some, we love them. And I told her, she's like, she hates them. And I said, when the video starts, put your head down because you're not going to like this thing. But the thing about a roller coaster, it's really a simile for our life. I mean, it's really a lot like it. You think about a lot of roller coasters, like when they start out, that one did, and that came out of the gate different. But many of them, it's chug, 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 real slow up to the top, right? Some of you, that may be where you say you are in life. You're like, I'm just waiting. I'm waiting to get there, right? Whatever it is. And then when you get there and you get over the top, you kind of forget how fast you're going to go once you top out, right? And then it just whoosh, and you're moving 1,000 miles an hour, right? Sometimes you're just grabbing hold. Anybody feel there in life? Right? And the thing about when we think about roller coasters in life, the reality is that never is our entire life just going slow, 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 nor is our entire life just going 100% all the way down the hill super fast. I think different phases of all of our lives are at different places. And as we celebrate or have fun on that way down and we scream, then it takes that hard right turn, and then you end up in a corkscrew, and sometimes you find your life turned upside down and you see a light at the end of the tunnel, but you're hoping it's a good thing. But as we ride the roller coaster of life, it sends us all spinning. There's moments of joy, there's moments of fear, right? Where would you say, when you think about the biggest area in your life, where is that area in your life that you're like, oh, it's going great? Because we have those. I never want to skip over those. But then when you think about those other areas in your life, where is that area where you feel like it's just chug, 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 it's going slow, not going the way you would hope it would go? Or that area in your life where you feel like it's upside down, you're in that backwards loop and you hope you're coming out. You hope you're not coming out of that backwards loop into a corkscrew, right? Because as unpredictable as life is, when we find ourselves on the roller coaster of life, and if you're not on the roller coaster of life, I would love to see what that looks like, because we're all on it at some level. The unpredictable nature of life, it causes us to have fear, right? It causes us to have doubt. I think when you don't know what's going to happen next, it can cause us to not trust or experience distrust. I think about at times, you think about when you're on the roller coaster and you're grabbing hold of that bar, you're hoping for the best. You feel so lonely because there's really nothing that you can do. and you're trying to figure out and you hope it stops, it can lead us to feelings of uncertainty, depression, anxiety, just fill in the blank. And that's just normal life for all of us. If you're new to church, you're like, well, don't those church people have it all figured out? Absolutely not. We don't have it figured out. We live in the same world as everybody else. Even, I wonder sometimes people think, what does my life look like? It's a lot like yours, right? We all have to do the things in life that life throws at us. And the great news is that if when you think about the life as it is and the roller coaster that we find ourselves on, it's not new. No one is experiencing anything new. Regardless of what you feel, you are not alone. There's some comfort in that. Regardless of what you feel, there are answers. There are solutions. In this current series we're in, we're looking at this guy's life who was absolutely on a roller coaster, who absolutely did not think his life was going in the direction that he felt, or even when we look at the title of it, dreamer, this guy named Joseph, it's in the Old Testament. We're going to be in the book of Genesis. Joseph had these two dreams, and in their culture, as they communicated with God at this time, if you had two similar dreams back to back in the same night, close to one another, that was an indicator that it was going to happen. So Joseph had these two dreams that had him ruling and reigning. And at this point in the story, as we're in week 3 in his life, he's nowhere close to that. His life has been full of detours. And this morning, as you sit here, if you would say, hey, that's my life, you would say your life is full of detours. You would even say, I don't know where there's hope. You would even go as far as to say, I'm not sure I believe what you believe. What I hope for you this morning is not only do you hear an incredible, epic story of a guy who walks through the detours, right? I hope you would equate that to whatever it is in your life. And then I hope you begin to process and see who God is. And when you think about why does that person seem to have it a little bit figured out more than that person? It may be based on the relationship that they have with God. And for those of us who have put our trust in Jesus, as we walk through the detours of life, as we walk through everything that life throws at us, my hope is that we learn from the life of Joseph and that we can take steps, really apply what we hear, right? This story is great, but the application that we can take from it, I believe, is what can change our life, that can move us closer as we grow in our faith. So this morning, we're gonna jump back into the life of Joseph. Now, a real quick recap on Joseph. First off, he was privileged. You look at kind of how he moved through it. He was privileged. He was his father's favorite, right? There was favoritism. That's what we talked about in week 1, the impact of that. His brothers hated him, so they threw him in a pit, all right? Huge detour, right? Because he had these dreams that he was going to reign and rule, and his brothers were like, no, you're not. You're Dad's favorite, and if you're saying you're going to reign and rule, we're going to kill you. That simple. Well, then they decided, no, we're not going to kill you. We're just going to sell you into slavery. That was never God's plan. But he ended up as a slave in Egypt in the penthouse of a very powerful official. That was week 2. We wrapped up week 2 with him back in prison because Potiphar, that's the power official that he lived with, his wife accused him of wanting to sleep with her. And back to prison he goes. Talk about detours. That's Joseph's life. I hope no one's life mirrors that, right? We would all like the privilege in the penthouse, but we don't want the other parts. So today we're going to pick up Joseph. We're going to look at where he is and what can we learn as he navigates the next detour, as he navigates life. We're going to jump in. We're going to pick him up in chapter 39 so we can catch up on where he is and how he's doing. And then we're going to move forward with what's next. So chapter 39, verse 20. This is what it says. But while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. He, the Lord, showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison ward. That right there, a huge detour. Nowhere where he thinks he's going to be, but how awesome is it that the Lord is still with him? For some of you this morning, you're like, that's all I need right there. Snap a pic of that, insert your name in right there, but while, and put your name. And maybe you're not in prison, but that's what it feels like. I hope you walk away this morning. If you doze off or you're just like, hey, I kind of checked out for a minute, we can know that those who have put our trust in Jesus, whatever detour you're on, the Lord is with you. And in the case of Joseph, he showed him kindness, and Joseph was granted favor. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all that he had, and he was responsible for all that was done there. Right, that's the same thing that happened when he was in prison the last time. When he was a slave. You see this pattern in the life of Joseph. We see what the warden did. Verse 23 says, the warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care. And why was that? Because the Lord was with Joseph. And he gave him success in whatever he did. Even on the detours. Y'all tracking with me? If you're on a detour, you're not alone. If you're in the spiral on the roller coaster, you're not alone. I love that. But Joseph, he is sitting in prison. He is in the dungeon. We pick up while he's there, he meets two new guys. Two new guys enter into our story. There's a chief cupbearer and the chief baker. The chief cupbearer and the baker, they come in. Now, why are they thrown in prison? We don't know. Did they do something right? Did they do something wrong? We don't know. Right? But it doesn't matter because Pharaoh, who they reported to, said, you're going to prison. And then all of a sudden, they're under the care of Joseph. One day, Joseph walks in and he sees these two guys. We don't know their names. That's all we know of them. He sees these two guys and they look dejected. I'm thinking everybody looks dejected. You're in the dungeon. Right? But he saw something different. And I love Joseph's response because now he's been a slave for about 11 years. And when they tell him what's wrong and they say, hey, we've had a dream and we have no one who can interpret it. Joseph in that moment, he's interpreted dreams. He knows how to do this. And rather than just saying, hey, I got this, tell them to me, what he tells them is, hey, here's the deal. God interprets the dreams. So he tells them, tell me your dreams. So in chapter 40, verse 9, we get to hear the cupbearer's dream. He says, in my dream, I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Continue on. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hands. So he tells them, this is it. And you think about, what did the cupbearer do? The name implies they handed the cup of wine to Pharaoh, tested it first, gave it to him. That was their job. And so his dream makes a lot of sense versus what he did when he was not in the dungeon. We read in verse 12 and 13, Joseph's interpretation of his dream. Here's what he says. He says, this is what it means. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head. Just remember those words. He will lift up your head and restore you to your position. At this moment, think about what the cupbearer is thinking. He's like, this is the greatest thing ever. Right? He says, I'm going to be restored. I'm going to get out of here in 3 days. And think about how he felt about Joseph. He's like, yes, not only was this guy taking care of me while I was in prison, now this guy's telling me my future, and I love what this guy says. You would think like in his brain, he's like, I'm going to remember this guy forever. So after Joseph gives him his interpretation, then he makes a request. He makes a request to the cupbearer. This is what he says. He says, but when it all goes well, I love that. There was no like, if it all goes well. He says, but when it all goes well with you, remember me and show me some kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh because you're going to be sitting right there with him, handing him the cup, and get me out of this prison. He says, I was forcibly removed. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews. And even here, I have done nothing to deserve being put in the dungeon. Nothing. He's like, hey, please, yes, God is with him, but he still says, hey, I'm gonna ask the cupbearer, if you just happen to mention it, just let him know that I'm still down here and that I'm not supposed to be here. We continue in verse 16. When the chief baker, right? So now imagine this. Now the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation. He said to Joseph, hey, I had a dream too. And he's thinking, my dream is similar to the cupbearer's dream. He says, come on, give me an interpretation. So he lays it out there. He says, on my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh. But the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. Now, can you see that baker? He's leaning, he's like, man, I'm 3 days, it's baskets, it's what I used to do. Like, I'm seeing this could be a good thing here, Joseph. Come on, give me one of those great interpretations like you gave the baker. We're buds, man, come on. We see in verse 18 and 19 what Joseph says to him. He says, this is what it means. The 3 baskets are 3 days. So he's like, okay, we're tracking. I've got the same great story. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head. That's a little bit different than lift your head up. And impale your body on a pole. He's thinking, can I get the other guys? And the birds, as if this is not bad enough, and the birds will eat your flesh. Well, when we look and we continue to read through, Pharaoh had a big birthday. Had a big birthday 3 days later, had a big party. He called both of these guys out of the dungeon. And I'll just leave it at this. Joseph's interpretation, his interpretation of their dreams was absolutely 100% spot on. The one was elevated back to their position, and the other, well, this is all what happened to the baker. We don't know the details, but what we see is that Joseph interpreted dreams once again, and they came true. Now, remember what the cupbearer said? Remember what Joseph asked the cupbearer? Hey, when all goes well with you, remember me. Well, unfortunately, we talk about detours in life. We talk about, hey, this thing could all of a sudden go well because now I've got a guy sitting beside Pharaoh. We see in verse 23, he says, the chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. So Joseph, wrongly accused, didn't really matter in that day and age, sits in jail. He continues to be in the dungeon for 2 more years. He's still in charge, but he's still a slave in the dungeon. As we jump into chapter 41, we see that the story changes. We see that in chapter 41, now Pharaoh has a dream. Pharaoh's beginning to dream, and they're really more like nightmares. And Pharaoh doesn't know what to do with these dreams. But the cupbearer says, hey, I remember this guy, that he interpreted my dream. Pharaoh says, go get him. Let's see if he can interpret my dreams. So now, Joseph is brought out of the dungeon. And he hears Pharaoh's 2 dreams. He says, tell me your dreams. So he tells him his dreams, and he says, what there were in my dream, my first dream, which was really a nightmare, he said, I saw 7 healthy cows. 7 healthy cows. He says, I was standing by the river Nile, and 7 healthy cows came up out of the river Nile, and they were grazing, just as happy as could be. He says they were sleek and they were fat. And then as they were grazing peacefully, 7 of the ugliest, gaunt, and nasty-looking cows I've ever seen in all of Egypt came up out of the Nile. And it's a nightmare. It's not just they killed them, they dismembered them. Think about like cannibalism. They tore them apart. The ugly, nasty cows tore up those healthy cows and ate them. That's the story. And after they ate them, the ugly, nasty, I'm guessing you could see their ribs, cows, you couldn't tell they gained 1 ounce. Nothing changed. That was nightmare 1. Pharaoh wakes up, I'm assuming he probably was in a deep sweat. I would have been. I'd have been screaming, reaching over for Amy to make sure that I was okay and she was okay. And then he had a second one. Remember, when you have them 2 back to back, it changes things, right? And then there were 7 healthy heads of grain, full and good, and 7 unhealthy heads that were withered, that were all shriveled up, couldn't even be sold at market. And all of a sudden, the unhealthy grain devoured the healthy grain. And then when they ate it, again, couldn't tell any difference. And there sits Pharaoh going, I don't know what to do. So he tells all this to Joseph. Joseph interprets his dream for him. And he doesn't stop there. But first, let me tell you how Joseph interpreted those dreams as he sat there and listened. This is how he interpreted it out. He told Pharaoh, what that means is there's going to be 7 years of abundance. Those healthy, that good-looking grain, those big fat cows, there's going to be 7 years of incredible abundance all over Egypt. And then there's going to be 7 years of famine. And this famine is going to be so bad, no one will remember this abundance. It is going to be absolutely horrible. Now he has Pharaoh's attention. And he goes on. He doesn't stop at this point. He could have stopped, but he said, and hey, Pharaoh, here's what you need to do. You just asked me to interpret your dreams, but I'm going to tell you what you need to do. What you need to do is you need to find someone who's discerning and who has wisdom. And you need to place them over every crop that's grown. And what you need to do is you then need to store these up. And then when the famine comes, you need to then sell it off. He actually said very specific, store up 1/5 of everything that's grown. And then when the famine hits, you'll be in a position to make it through the 7 years that are going to lie ahead. And then he stopped. That was it. He did what he asked. We see in Genesis chapter 41, verse 39, we get to see Pharaoh's response, because that's a lot. Could you imagine you wake up and that's what is presented to you? That's what's going to happen to everything that you reign and rule over? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, this is great. Since God, and remember, Pharaoh doesn't believe in this God. He doesn't believe. This is not the God that he worships. They worship gods, little g gods. But he says, but since God has made all this known to you, and there is no one as discerning and wise as you, right? He sees all this and he's like, we're not even from the same place. They see him as an inferior. He's still considered a slave. He goes on in verse 40. He says, you shall be in charge of my palace, and all of my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. Man, I don't know that I want the journey that Joseph goes on, but how awesome is that? He's sitting and he's going, okay, so I started with privilege, right? When we do a quick review, it's a whole lot of P's here. I have a hard time. It makes my mic go funny when I do all these P's. But it's privilege is where he started. Then he was thrown into a pit. Then he was in the penthouse. Then he was in prison. Now he finds himself in the palace. And no one is greater than him except Pharaoh. He's calling the shots. You talk about all the detours. Wherever you are, whatever's going on in your life today, you may feel you're somewhere up here. I'm not saying you're going to be in a palace. This is not a direct one-to-one correlation with all of us. But what we do know is that God was with Joseph the entire time. We skim over what it was like to be in prison. We skim over what it was like to be a slave. We skim over what it was like to feel like our dreams are never going to be fulfilled. But here's what I hope we can all see, is that God is with you, even when your life isn't where you dreamed it would be. If that's you today, if you're saying, I'm nowhere where I thought I was going to be, remember, God is with you. If in 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years or 2 decades from now, you feel like I'm nowhere where I thought I was going to be, remember, God is with you. That right there is a great takeaway. I could wrap it up right here, right now. And that's solid. But what I want to do this morning is I want to dig a little bit deeper. I want to dig in and look at what made Joseph able to make the decision he made. Because this, we can go, okay, God is with me. But what I hope we can process out of this together, we can explore a little bit deeper. We can leverage in a good way for ourselves to help us grow in our faith is what did it require of Joseph when he was asked by Pharaoh, can you interpret my dreams? That's where we're going to dig in. Because I think if we can get to that place where Joseph was, we're going to look at chapter 41, verse 15. We're going to look at this incredible opportunity that he had and dig down to, could I get to a place where I could say what Joseph said? And if you've put your trust in Jesus, that's what I want to lead us through in these next few minutes as I wrap us up. And if you've never put your trust in Jesus, this is what we're all shooting for, is to be more like him. And to be able to know when we have these incredible opportunities or we see heart-wrenching failures, that we can know God is with us. When we look at Genesis 41:15, this is right before he interpreted the dreams. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream, right? We've already covered that. And no one can interpret it. We knew that. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Now, put yourself where Joseph was. Remember all the detours? Remember sitting in jail for 2 more years? Remember feeling betrayed by his best buddy, or, not really his best buddy, but the cupbearer? Right? You think about what was going on right there. And now he's sitting in front of Pharaoh, the most powerful man. And in this moment, when he's asked that question, Pharaoh has the power, based on his answer, to elevate him, as we saw he did. But Joseph doesn't know that yet. But if he gives him an answer that Pharaoh doesn't like, he could send him straight back to prison, right back to the dungeon to be forgotten about forever. Or if Pharaoh really doesn't like it, he could kill him. So put yourself in that position. And what Joseph was being asked to do, interpret dreams, he's like, I got this. It's as easy as walking up and down those steps. I don't need to practice. I got it. So in that moment, all that was going on in Joseph's life, he's so far away from where he thought he was going to be, but now he has the most powerful man standing in front of him who had the potential to elevate him. He had a choice to the answer that he made. What I want to present to you is if you were in that situation, make it up for wherever you are in your life. What would that look like in your life? Who's that most powerful person that could elevate you to where you think this would be the best thing ever? Get me out of prison. How would you respond? Because I love how Joseph responded. Chapter 40, verse 16. He says, I cannot do it. He admitted his weakness in front of the most powerful man ever. I cannot do it. I don't know that I would have everything that it takes if my life had been in such a bad state as what it looks like Joseph was, to say to the most powerful man that could have elevated me, I can't. Could you? Just answer that on your own. Could you? But he didn't stop there. He continues on. He says, but Joseph replied to Pharaoh, but God. See, he immediately gave the credit. He took himself out. He said, I can't. Not on my own, but God. These are 2 of the greatest words, but God. Right? I get chills right now. I really do. I mean, and I've gone over this. I know what I'm going to say to you. And I'm like, when I think about that in my own everyday life, I can't. But God. And then we watch how God fills in the blanks after that. Right after that, he said, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. And when he's saying that, he's like, you just need an interpretation of the dream. I'm going to give it to you. But it's not me. It's God. See, I love this. Think about this. Carry this with you. I can't. God can. See, I can't. God can. You think about the roller coaster of life, right? When you're in that spiral and you're thinking, how do I get out of this? It's like, I can't. God can. You think about the fun part, the success part, and it gets easy for us to go, oh, look at what I did. Look at what I accomplished. Look at what we've done. And it's easy to take that credit. It's easy for us to claim the credit of things that really aren't ours. And the world celebrates that. I'd love to get to a spot where I could be like, I can't. One of the things I'll say to people is I'll say at times, I don't want to take credit for that, for the good, because if I say the good is all about me, then when it goes bad, the bad is all about me. Right? If you're going to claim it all, like, woo, look at me. When all of a sudden it goes this way, you got to say, woo, look at me. And we don't want to do that. We just want to stay on this end of the woo, right? So when life is going great, here's a question that I want each of us, I'm going to pose to you. Is what area, or if you need to make it plural, in your life, are you claiming too much credit? You look at the successes that you're living in. Where are you going? That's all me. I did it. Look how good I am. I did it. Because it's easy to find ourselves there. Because it feels good to win. And there's nothing wrong with winning. So ask yourself, where do I need to slow back, pull back and say, but that's God's credit. But then on the flip side, there are those of you today who you would absolutely say you feel like you're in the worst part of that roller coaster ever. You're hanging on for dear life. You feel like failure is all around you. And if someone says, can you do it? Right? Your immediate answer is I can't. But the reality is, when we struggle through our failures, it's easy just to pull back and run away. But what if in our failure and in our insecurity and in our depression, in our anxiety, in our loneliness, in our distrust, all those things that we all experience, rather than just kind of slinking off into a corner, taking our talents and our resources and just going and hide, what if we would say to ourselves, I can't. God can. Right? As you look at areas in your life, where are you carrying too much blame? Where you feel that load, but you've forgotten that by yourself you can't, but God can. I love that he walks with us either direction. Imagine as we go through our life, imagine getting to a place that when people give you the natural accolades that we all want, and you determine how much you say this out loud, and there's no problem with saying thank you. Thank you. And you may not be in a setting where you can be like, and I give God all the glory, and I'm not sure everybody that does the football interviews really mean it. I'm just saying. But what if we got to the point, imagine if we got to the point that we really meant it. That deep down we knew that I can't do this. I can't do this on my own, in my strengths or in my failures. So my hope for each of us is that as we journey through, as we grow in our faith, we continue to process the powerful name of Jesus. And that when things are great, it's not me, it's him. And when I find myself struggling, I can realize alone I can't do it, but through him, I can. That's my prayer, that it changes your life, it ripples into your family, it ripples into our community, and we begin to see how God sees us differently than before. Let me pray for us. God, this morning, I thank you for the power that is in your name. God, it's so easy to get caught up in all the things we do in life that we have to do, to pay the bills, to cut the grass, to take out the trash, to empty the dishwasher, God, just the general life stuff. And then, God, when the tough stuff hits us, it gets so easy to rely on our own strengths. Gosh, for us to say, I can, or I have to, or it's totally up to me. God, help us to find the balance, to use the talents and the resources that you've given us. God, the innate, the knowledge, the strengths, all those things. And then, God, ultimately know that, but God, it's not going to happen. God, thank you that you love us. Thank you that we can put our trust in you. And we pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen.